Katie Hobbins, Managing Editor for MD+DI, and today I'm sitting down with Dr. Brittany Barreto, founder of FemHealth Insights and host of Femtech Focus podcast. She is also a global women's health innovation leader and outspoken voice for the femtech industry. Through our conversation today, we will discuss the current femtech landscape, how the industry has progressed in innovation, and highlight specific companies showcasing why women's health is vital to health in general. Dr. Barreto, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me today about this vital subject. To begin, let's start with the basics. Why is femtech such an important subsect of the industry and deserving of its own moniker?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to tell your audience more about femtech because not only is it a subsection of the medtech and healthcare industry, it's also a movement. So we define femtech as innovation in women's health and wellness. It includes solutions to conditions that solely, disproportionately, or differently affect females, women, and girls. And essentially what we're saying there is that women's health is not just breast cancer and menstruation and pregnancy. It's also autoimmune disease and migraines and bone health and gut health. And the reason that it's a movement more so than just an industry of products and services is that it's this idea that the backdrop to science and healthcare innovation has been based on a male paradigm. So for much of scientific discovery, we've assumed if it works in a male cell line, surely it's the same thing happening in a female cell line. Or if it works in a male animal model, surely it'll work in a female animal model. Same with clinical trials. Women weren't included until 1993 with the assumption if it works in men, it should work the same in women. And we know today that this is absolutely not the case. We have a very different biology. And so the movement is that sex and gender need to be incorporated at the basic scientific research level, all the way up through product design. So that's what femtech is. And I love working in this industry. Happy to talk more about it today.
So over the last few years, you've definitely seen an uptick of people talking about femtech. Why do you think the industry is finally getting mainstream attention?
It's a great question because healthcare has been here, women have been here. Why has now women's healthcare a thing? And we find that there are several factors really accelerating our growth. The first is women in STEM. Women are much more likely to research things that are female or women specific than male researchers. And so as we have more female scientists, engineers, and doctors, they themselves are seeing problems like waiting 8 years for endometriosis diagnosis and saying to themselves, well, this seems silly and inhumane, actually. I'm a geneticist. I wonder if there's different gene expression analysis we could do for endometrial tissue and figure it out, right? So these women are in these educational positions to actually say, I think I might even be able to solve this problem. So we see 85% of founders in femtech are women. So it's an industry truly driven by women who are now creditable and have the skills to create healthcare solutions. The second is that we see more women in finance. And what I mean by that is angel investors. So to get that first check, you really have to convince somebody of the problem you're trying to solve. And when you're trying to pitch about hot flashes to a room full of men who've never had one, they may not be as passionate about investing in that first round. So women in finance is growing. And then we just see a destigmatization. This has a lot to do with younger generations really being open and loud and questioning sex and gender, but also just a society that says, hey, if we can have Game of Thrones on TV and, very violent, gory things, why do we still have fake blue liquid in a menstrual pad commercial? That just seems so incongruent. And so these are conversations that are happening, and it's really moving the needle on, well, then why don't we have solutions? Because people are finally talking about their menopause and their endo and, their incontinence. And with this knowledge of how common it is, people are starting to say, well, then there's no solutions. That's unacceptable. Let's build something.
You hit on it a little bit, but I do want to go a little bit deeper on how the political and social landscape, especially in the US, has shaped the industry.
It's having huge effects. I mean, women in politics are helping women's health, right? But we're still not 50-50. We still aren't represented entirely. But we're seeing that it's more than the potential obvious case of abortion, right? Which you may be referring to in the US landscape, and contraception for that matter. What I'll talk about is maybe a less controversial version of what that is affecting. So let's talk about IVF for a second. And this actually did come up in Alabama with the IVF clinics being shut down when their Supreme Court said that embryos were life. This is actually having a ripple effect through all of women's health, whether you are a startup working on postpartum depression, miscarriage, fertility, or maternal health. The idea that, losing a baby could be considered an abortion under some potential descriptions is actually affecting a lot of innovation in women's health. And so something really interesting about our industry that not many other industries have is the societal and political influence on it. I think climate tech is having a little bit of that kind of thing, but I also think that everyone now is on board with the earth is too hot, weather is insane, we need to come up with clean tech. I'm really hoping that the next 20 to 30 years, everyone's on the same page about women's health, and we can work together to advance women's health, because honestly, women's health is everyone's health. We have all been in a woman's uterus at some point, every one of us. And so we can't say that this is a silo of healthcare. It is actually the healthcare of our entire communities is based on a woman's health. And I see actually a lot of governments now involved in femtech based on them finally seeing the data of the economic burden of females' illness. So when women are sick, of which we are sick way more than men are, and by sick, I also mean like chronic illness, fatigue, unproductive due to symptoms, that is hurting countries' GDP. And so we see with 50% of the workforce being female now for the first time in human history, companies and governments are actually looking at the economic burden of women's illnesses. So whether or not you are passionate about women's health like I am, and if you're just passionate about money or capitalism or GDPs, women's health is actually something you really need to care about.
And that really puts us on to the next topic that I wanted to discuss with you, which is cybersecurity. You talked about Roe v. Wade. You talked about frozen embryos. Should women continue to be cautious of the security of especially reproductive devices because of governmental involvement?
I would say first and foremost that femtech companies are pro women and they are doing whatever they can to protect you. So I feel very confident in saying that we are an industry led by authentic people who want what's right and what's good for women, and that I have yet to come across, mischievous people trying to take your data or doing something wrong with it. Now, this can happen though if we have a femtech startup that is using a pre-made software and they're plugging it into their app or their website, and then that software potentially has some other data scraping ability that maybe the founder or company doesn't know about. And so I definitely recommend any female user of anything digital that's asking for your information to, feel free to reach out to these companies. A lot of times it's the founders, responding to customer service and stuff. Go ahead and send them a message and say, hey, I'm curious about what your data security and data privacy messages are. I see a lot of femtech companies joining together, sharing resources, sharing legal terminology in their privacy policies in order to protect their users better. So first and foremost, it's not an industry that is out to get you. It's an industry that truly is uplifting women, and that there are just leaks or cracks in the system that we're all trying to help each other solidify and get rid of. But I also think the power is in the user's hand to go ahead and ask, and you have every right to ask, how is my data being used? Do you really need to know my age in order to help me track my PCOS symptoms, right? So there's a certain amount of the company plus the user coming together to protect their data together.
So moving forward, what can companies do wrong when they are creating a medical device targeted towards women? Examples including patronizing practices, maybe going a little overboard in femininity when it is not
Mm-hmm.
exactly required, and missing out on features because of that focus that are useful for the targeted audience.
I don't see too many femtech specific companies creating solutions that are like this, but I do see companies that already have a product line of other devices, and now they want to get into women's health. I think they're actually the biggest culprit of this. And you're absolutely right. They think to themselves, we'll just shrink it and pink it, right? Because surely then women will buy it. And it's like, well, if the back end of it is not made for us just because it's pink, that's not helpful. But I also see the creation of solutions that women don't actually need or want. So I'll see people promoting rejuvenation of the vulva and, reducing wrinkles in the labia. And I just want to scream because there are so many issues in women's health that are in dire need of innovation, and wrinkles on labia are not one thing that is some women are staying up late at night worried about. And so, again, I don't think it's necessarily too many femtech companies where that's their whole company and their one product. But I do see these bigger companies realizing, oh my gosh, gynecology is a ton of money in it. We haven't entered that space. Let's create something for better sex. And yes, women want better sex, and women deserve to have a great, healthy sexual, experience and deserve pleasure. But there are literally things also killing women, or we are using medical devices every day that are 300 years old. I would really love for these companies to see, what do women really need? What do they really want today?
I'd love to discuss with you the companies or products that really stand out as pillars of femtech innovation. One that comes to mind for me is Aspivix's CareVix device that uses vacuum technology to replace the use of the tenaculum.
Aspivix is a game changer. So we've been using the tenaculum since the Civil War to remove bullets from men. And they thought, well, this little clamping medical device would be great to clamp for the cervix to stabilize it when entering the uterus, whether that be most commonly for IUD insertion. The real blasphemy here is that doctors have not told women how painful the procedure will be. And even if they do know, women are actually like, I'm opting out. They don't want to have that much pain. And so Aspivix is using a slight suctioning, a device that has, it looks like a little smiley face that goes onto the bottom of the cervix, and you pull the edge of the device and it kind of creates a little suction of air, and that in itself will stabilize the cervix with about 90% decreased pain, I believe, in their clinical trials. FDA approved, billing code exists, for sale already in the US. It's incredible. Women are reporting much, much more comfortable experiences. Some other medical devices that I'm personally really excited about, there's one called Hy-Ivy, Hyivy, Hy-Ivy, and it's actually created by a cancer survivor, Rachel. And Rachel's the founder, CEO, and she had cervical cancer in her early 20s. And radiation treatment for gynecological cancer can cause a lot of scar tissue. And she was given a dilator set, which essentially was the silicone cylinder-like devices that she was told to go home, insert into her vagina, and just break up the scar tissue on her own, which is incredibly painful and just traumatic and unacceptable in today's day and age of medicine. And so she's created this device that actually uses air to increase and decrease in size. It's self-lubricating. It even can have medicine inside of it to insert medicine into the vagina, and it uses heat, and it has this awesome dashboard that actually even sends the data to your pelvic floor therapist so that you can be monitored by your doctor in congruently in training and improving your pelvic floor. So I really love Hy-Ivy. Another one I'm really excited about is actually out of Ireland. It's called Nua Surgical, and it's the first ever medical device to support the C-section. So when you're getting a cesarean, it's huge abdominal surgery, and it's being cut multiple layers of your body, huge incision. And today's standard of care is that you have a nurse on either side of the table holding your abdomen open with their hands, because no one ever has made a medical device to hold open your abdomen for a baby to come out, which is wild, right? So when we talk about, creating things women don't need, here's a very basic entry to femtech that we needed. And so the founder, Barry, he's created this, it looks like a very deep oval that can be inserted into the abdomen, and it is in a shape that allows for a baby to be removed from the abdomen. So really excited about that. It's going to decrease infection. It's going to decrease the pain after recovery, because you can imagine this is your body being held open. It's going to be much more comfortable for a woman after in recovery. The last one I'll mention is called Molly Surgical, Molli. And this one is also really fantastic, and it's for breast cancer. So women who have, doctors have identified a lump or something in her breast, and she needs to go in for a biopsy. Usually what she has to do is go to the hospital early in the morning. She gets a little metallic wire inserted into the side of her breast where the tip of it is pointing directly at the lump or the thing that needs to be biopsied. And this woman then needs to lay still until her surgical time. And it's not an emergency. And so sometimes she can be there literally all day with this wire hanging out of her that she can't move. Molly Surgical is just this little tiny bullet, itty bitty bullet that the radiologist, because that's how this wire is inserted, as the radiologist is looking in the machine while inserting it. They just literally put the bullet there into next to the lump. The woman can actually even go home. She doesn't even have to stay in the hospital. And then that's how they use it in the surgery. So I just really love this idea of this really bare minimum, almost barbaric version of medical care for women to being one that's accessible, affordable, and convenient and safer and less pain. I think that's also a really big thing that we're seeing a lot more is people saying pain is not acceptable for women. Even though a lot of our biology induces pain on us, whether it be our menstrual cycle or labor pains, that does not mean that the medical system is allowed to induce pain on us.
I did want to talk about pain management for women because that does seem like such a large topic of conversation when you're talking about women's health and the fact that we don't have a lot of pain management when our male counterparts do. So, what are those things that are being put into place? I know that we just discussed some of those options about pain management. We have the Caravix device, we have these little things, but there's such there's so much more innovation that could be coming out to support more pain management for women.
I think right now we're at a point of acknowledging that women's healthcare is very painful, and I'm excited to see the next 20 years of the solutions that come out to help fix it. But right now, literally, and it's so sad that this is where we're at, but we are at a turning point of acknowledging how painful women's healthcare is. For example, the tenaculum. This has been forever what people have used, and honestly, platforms like TikTok are exposing it. So women are feeling empowered enough to talk about it, and therefore they're not feeling isolated. And then women are finding millions of other women that are like, that happened to you too. That's how I felt as well. And, women, unfortunately, in society are told it's probably just you, and it's also probably in your head, and you're likely just a sensitive person. But when you have 1 million women commenting on your post saying, me too, you realize, oh, this is not a me issue. This is a healthcare issue. This is a bigger issue. And now healthcare is a business, right? Women are choosing to go to doctors who have pain management protocols, right? And women are feeling empowered. What is your pain management protocol for my IUD insertion? And if you don't have one, I'm going to see another clinician, and you're going to lose my money, right? You're going to lose my reimbursement from my insurance. And so doctors are now starting to ask themselves, what programs do they need to put in place? What new tools and devices? And that's where I see these new medical devices coming in, and I'm excited to see what else happens.
I know. Well, especially, I feel like there's been such an increase in making sure that they're advocating for themselves inside the doctor's office and asking for the pain management that isn't offered, or asking if there's a different way that we can do the procedure, or asking if there's a device that could make this easier. And I think that that's also helping with the innovation of Femtech because obviously there's a need in the industry.
I think there's this changing of paradigms of power dynamics where, the doctor was always right. And we're starting to question that. We're starting to say, well, you just had some years of education, right? And you have some authority. But at the end of the day, this is my body. And I think that deep knowing of women and females today that this is my body and I get to decide what happens to it is translating into a lot of aspects of our life and how we're going to interact, and that includes healthcare and medicine.
Now, Dr. Barreto, you're coming out with your book, Unlocking Women's Health, Femtech and the Quest for Gender Equity starting the pre-order, the pre-sale on June 24th. Can you give our readers a synopsis?
Absolutely. This is the first book ever about Femtech. So when I entered the industry back in 2019, there was only one venture fund in the world investing. There was no accelerators, no conferences, no community groups, no podcasts, no book. And so that's what I've dedicated my life to the last 5 years is building up the resources that the industry needs in order to propel itself and have awareness and gain momentum. So the book is a compilation of 100 interviews that I've done on the Femtech Focus podcast. So essentially what I've done is the book starts with an introduction to what is Femtech and how we've gotten here today. We've touched on a little bit about this today, the influences of why now and, what are the major gaps or thought leadership around Femtech. And then I have 16 chapters, each one highlighting a different health vertical. So we have menopause, fertility, breastfeeding. We even have chronic conditions, cancer, another chapter called non-bikini medicine, where we even have a hematologist interview in there talking about blood clots and treatment of blood disorders in females versus males. Really cool, just a very wide selection of companies, not too deep. This is really meant to be an introduction and a reference book for anyone interested in innovation in women's health. And then I end the book about talking about funding and unique barriers that women face in the femtech industry, and a conclusion and call to action for the future of humanity, essentially being based on what we do today in femtech. So if you're interested at all learning more about femtech, getting a good little tidbits and good stories, I've tried to write it in a way that you feel confident after you read it to go and continue to carry the message that sex and gender need to be incorporated in science and healthcare, and that women's health is literally the next era of healthcare. So pre-sales start June 24th. You can go to drbrittanybarreto.com. That's drbrittanybarreto.com/book, or just go to the website. You'll see the tab for it. Also, you can follow me on LinkedIn and at Brittany Barreto. I'll definitely be announcing it there. And the books ship out September 1st.